Now back to our interview with Father Augustine.
Father Augustine, you who work with youth all the time, you're in the schools teaching, you're doing youth retreats. We all know that there are so many wounded young people out there, suffering from low self-esteem, low confidence. They've had deep interior wounds, and having an identity crisis. And your book addresses some of these topics here. And can you give us a little glimpse of what you're talking about here and how you address these issues?
Well, I guess I go about it exactly the wrong way, but it seems to work. If you have low self-esteem, that's for really good reason. I mean, you're a sinner and you're probably a pretty lousy person like I am. Yeah. But that's the beauty of Christianity, is that Christ takes us in our brokenness. And the more broken we are, the more he wants to help us. He loves us. The more incompetent I am, the greater the miracle when I actually end up writing a book. I mean, how did God do that? My folks live on the Jersey Shore, not too far from where they filmed the reality show. And we had never been down there. We had never seen the show. So my mother and I went down to the boardwalk, which I do not recommend, by the way, taking your mother to the Jersey Shore boardwalk. But it was full of teenagers, and they were pierced and tattooed and tanned to exhaustion. And not that I have any problem with that really on a theoretical level. The problem, what struck me as sad, was that they didn't know there was an alternative. There were T-shirts with the most vile slogans on them, and it's one thing to be bad. I lived with 8 rugby players in college, and we were bad sometimes. Don't tell my mother. But we knew we were being bad. And I tell my senior apologetics, because they always want to challenge church teaching, and I love that in them. And I say, look, do what you want. I'm just telling you the truth, okay? Now, you can go disobey. That's your prerogative. You have free will. But I'm not going to stand before God and say, I was afraid to tell them what was wrong. If you're too weak to do what's right, I understand, and I suspect I know Jesus does as well. But you got to know what's wrong. These kids, they really believed that the purpose of their life was to be like Snooky or whatever her name is. That to be excessively inebriated and by all sorts of causes was the goal. Like the end goal of life was to be famous and rich and sexy and all those things, fame, sexiness, wealth, there's nothing objectively wrong with those, but they're not the goal. And if you're going to go about it the wrong way, I just want you to know. Actually, I'm just now thinking of I took a trip to New York once with my father, and there was an old man handing out "Come to Jesus" pamphlets, and no one was reading them. They were throwing them on the ground. He'd pick them back off the ground and hand them. And I said as I got up to him, I felt so bad, I took it from him. I said, "Oh, thank you so much. I'm going to read this." And he looked surprised. And I said, people don't read these very often, do they? He's like, "No." I was like, "Why do you do it?" And he says, it's just my job to hand out the pamphlets, right? I don't, what you do with it is your business. God has called me to hand out the pamphlets. And I guess maybe that's what I'm doing is, the kids can do what they want in the end, but you and I, we've got to hand out the pamphlets.
That's right.
Or we're not doing our job.
Yeah. And you've got a great sense of humor, and I mean you've got some humility. You're a humble man, and you use there was so much practical and spiritual insights there to help overcome these things, and a lot of them are your own experiences.
Yeah.
So
well, the apologies. I was talking earlier about apologies. St. Benedict says that when a monk notices that his brother is upset, he is to immediately throw himself on the floor and beg for a blessing. And I love that, to the point where it's kind of annoying to my brethren. Anytime I sense that they're upset, I'm on the floor.
Right.
And I think it's just so great on a number of levels. Number one, you don't have to feel sorry to do it. Number two, it's not really an apology. Number three, you're physically under them.
That's right.
So it restores whatever dignity they perceive to have been taken away. And then you ask them for a gift on top of it. I told maybe a rude joke in the faculty room not long ago. And one of the faculty said, you know, I find that really offensive. And I didn't have time. I still don't think it was that offensive. But anyway, I immediately I threw myself on the floor and I said, may I have your blessing? And she said, oh, no, I was wrong. Which is like the fastest way I've ever won an argument. Right? It's just such a brilliant way to approach conflict, you know, and I told the kids, and I tell kids all the time, next time your parents are really mad, try throwing yourself on the floor and begging for a blessing. See what it does to them. And usually they laugh. And of course, there's no better cure for tension than laughter, you know. So,
that's right.
I'm really, really big on apologies. Maybe excessively into apologies.
Right.
But then again, when you forget to return the keys as often as I do, you gotta get good at apologies. So.
Hey, well, thanks for telling us about your book there, Father. And you know, you could buy this book at Religious Catalog. You know,
I will.
Okay, please. Do that.
Order copies for all my friends.
There you go. So yeah, you won't be disappointed by this book. It's good for anybody, youth, people of all ages.
I illustrated it myself.
There you go. There, and those, you got some really cool pictures in there, by the way.